welcome to the Sun's Tory leadership debate here at News UK's headquarters by London Bridge. It's the final showdown, the last head-to-head between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt, before one of these two men is chosen to become our next Prime Minister in just 8 days' time. My name is Tom Newton-Dunn, and I'm the political editor of The Sun. Over the next 90 minutes, together with TalkRADIO, we'll invite our readers, listeners and ordinary Conservative Party members here in the audience with us to put their questions directly to the candidates. We want to find out their plans to deliver Brexit really stack up, how they will solve a raft of other problems back home, and whether they have the character to do the toughest job in the land. To begin, each candidate will give a 1 minute long opening statement. We tossed a coin just now. Jeremy won and chose to go second. Just the coin toss. So Boris will start. Mr. Johnson, your opening statement, please.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everybody. This country faces a momentous choice. We can either continue with the same old, failed, can-kicking approach, destroying trust in politics and sapping business confidence, or else we can change, get back our mojo and put ourselves on the path to long-term success. And the way to do that is to get Brexit done by October the 31st. And then to unite our country with more money for our schools, more police out on the beat, full fibre broadband for all, and then, as Conservatives, to make our case again to the country with renewed power and conviction that to have fantastic infrastructure and public services, you must have a dynamic market economy, because that is how we beat the semi-Marxist wealth and job-destroying lunacy of Jeremy Corbyn. And as somebody who campaigned for Brexit and who believes in it, and who has a plan to unite this country, and, by the way, long experience of defeating the London Labour left, I believe I'm the right person to unleash on this project now, and I hope I can count on your support.
Mr. Johnson, thank you. Mr. Hunt, your opening statement.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sun readers, Talk Radio listeners want two things from our next Prime Minister. They want to deliver Brexit and stop Corbyn. Fail on either, and it'll be a disaster for our democracy and a disaster for ordinary people, ordinary families up and down the country. I will deliver both. On Brexit, if people think with their heads as well as their hearts, they will see that my way of delivering Brexit is more likely to get us out by the 31st of October, because I have a plan for no deal, but also the ability to negotiate a deal that can get through the Houses of Parliament. But being Prime Minister is not just about what you promise, it's about what you can deliver. And I delivered with Boris the London Olympics. I delivered more doctors and nurses for the NHS. I have been responsible for our foreign policy at a time of international tension, and now I will deliver for our country with plans to fire up our economy, sort out our education system, make us walk tall in the world with more investment in our armed forces, and get more young people to vote Conservative. Most of all, I offer the calm, determined leadership that has always and will always make our country great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. So we'll get to the questions immediately. We'll look at Brexit for the first half of the debate because it is extremely important. Gentlemen, just two rules. First, no speeches. You just have one, you'll get one at the end. Second, please do not talk over each other. To the first question, and it's Luke Black. Thank you.
You wouldn't do that, would you, Boris?
Luke Black. Our first question, and Luke is a member of the Conservative Party.
Hi, hello. I'm here with a group called Blue Beyond of Young Conservatives, and a lot of us have not yet decided who we're going to vote for. One thing that we'd really want to know is, why do you think that you're the right person to deliver Brexit after two people have failed to do so already? Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, please.
Well, I think, Luke, there's a very simple reason. I think for 3 years we've had a lot of drift and dither and indecision about the fundamental questions of what Brexit means. And I campaign for Brexit. I believe in it. I understand that to do it properly, you must come out of the customs union. You must come out of the single market. Otherwise, there's frankly no sense in it. And I think what Brussels will get at long last from me, they will get somebody who has that clarity of vision, which I think will be incredibly welcome to our friends and partners in Brussels as well as in the country. I think we've had a lot of defeatism, a lot of negativity, and I think that the EU will respond now to some real clarity of purpose in the free trade deal that we're going to do.
Mr. Hunt, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Well, Luke, the question is not about the willingness or desire to get out of the EU by the 31st of October. Whichever way we voted in the referendum, we are Democrats in the Conservative Party. We know the greatest thing about our country as one of the oldest and most robust democracies in the world is that people like Boris and I do what the people tell us to do, and that's why we are going to leave. The question is who has the plan to do it. And if we look at no deal, I don't think there's a huge difference between me and Boris. We're both willing to leave without a deal if that is the only way to leave. But counting on no deal, when you've got MPs in Parliament who are actively trying to block a no-deal Brexit, they succeeded in March, they're trying now, they will try again this autumn. That is the high-risk way of leaving. The low-risk way is to send to Brussels a Prime Minister who can actually negotiate a deal that can get through Parliament. And I've got the detailed plan to do that. I've worked out how I would get my negotiating team to put together a deal that can get through Parliament. I've thought through how we're going to persuade the European Commission to unpick that deal that they've said they won't unpick. I don't say it's going to be easy, but it's not impossible. And if you choose the right person, this can be done.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, the last deal took 2 years to negotiate. You still want a deal, I think. You've got 100 days. Europe's on holiday for about half of that. You've also got to pass that into law. It's completely unrealistic.
Well, I don't think it's remotely unrealistic. There are valid interlocutors across the European Union, and they will want to be doing a deal with us. They have all sorts of reasons, I think, for wanting to get this thing over the line. They don't want to have the Brexit party continuing to occupy the airwaves in Strasbourg in the way that they are. They're the largest single group. Anne Widdecombe's fantastic, but there's a limit, I think, to the amount they want to hear from her in the EU. There's the question of the 39 billion, which is a very considerable incentive for our friends and partners. And I may say this is one of the difficulties of these debates. I don't really want to, in any way, to disagree with anything that Jeremy says, but I'm forced by the logic of the argument. I do think it is wrong not to prepare very robustly now for a no-deal Brexit in case we don't get the deal that we want. Clearly, what we need to do is have a smooth exit by which they protract the existing arrangements, zero tariff, zero quota. But it's also right, at the same time, to get ready to come out without an agreement, isn't it? That's what it's simple business sense. And I think that we can prepare and that we must prepare. And the country was virtually ready in March the 29th. And I don't think we will carry any conviction with our friends and partners over the channel unless they look into our eyes and see that we are absolutely determined to come out of the EU on October the 31st, come what may. And that's what I will deliver.
Mr. Hunt?
Well, I have every bit as much passion as Boris about getting out by the 31st of October. But you know something? The worst moment in British politics in the last year. Sorry, I didn't hear didn't we have a pact, Boris? We weren't going to talk over each other.
It was a very, very gentle murmur.
Okay. Well, let me say this. The worst moment in British politics in the last year was when we failed to leave the EU by the end of March. We, as Conservatives, Boris and I, at the last election, and then repeatedly, we promised Sun readers, Talk Radio listeners, families up and down this country that we would be out by the end of March. And we betrayed that trust when we failed to do that. Now, right now, Boris is guaranteeing something that he knows neither he nor I can truly guarantee, because we don't know what Parliament will do. We don't have a majority in Parliament, and we can hope, and I would urge my colleagues not to take no deal off the table. I think it's one of the most dangerous and destructive things they can do when we're trying to get a deal, but we can't control what Parliament does, and I don't want to betray that trust a second time. The way that we will do this is by going to Brussels, having a constructive tone, but total and utter determination. They need to know that we are leaving. They need to know that we have got some sensible plans, which I think we do have, and then I think we've got a chance. But I will say this, Tom, to answer your question about timing very directly. If we got a deal, And I've said I will give the EU until the end of September to see whether there is a serious prospect of a deal. So that's the month of August, constructing that deal that can get through Parliament. The month of September, talking to the EU. If we have a deal and it needs a few more days to get through Parliament and we haven't got there by the end of October, then I would allow it those extra days. And I see a lady shaking her head here. Because I don't believe that the people of this country would want in that situation for us to rip up a deal that was just a matter of days away. But there's something else. If you take the view that you will absolutely rip up any deal that you may have at the end of September, however close it is to becoming law, if you took that view, you will encourage all those MPs in Parliament who want to stop us leaving without a deal to bring down the government in a vote of confidence. And so I say very frankly...
Can Mr Johnson respond to that?
Yeah, no, I will, but I just make my point. If you get this wrong, you will end up in an election before Brexit. And the one person who will never, ever deliver Brexit is Jeremy Corbyn. And that would be the most dangerous thing of all.
I'm just anxious that we don't send out a signal to the rest of the EU that we're willing to contemplate another delay. I think it's absolutely absurd. We said on March the 29th that we were going to delay until April the 8th. That turned out then to be a delay of another 6 months. I'm hearing that Jeremy might delay for a few days. Well, how many days? Is that 3 days? Is that 6 days? You've said you'd be prepared to wait until Christmas. Which Christmas is it? I think that what the EU want and need to know is that this country is robust. This country is self-confident. We're going to come out of the EU on October the 31st. And may I just point out...
You've done a good job pointing a lot out. I need to...
point out the legal position. So just very important point, Tom, sorry.
Very quick.
In a nutshell, the legal position is that we do come out. The momentum is with exit on October the 31st unless the UK government actually asks for a further delay and the EU gives us another delay. So let's get on. Let's not go down that madness. Let's avoid that and come out on October the 31st. That's what the people want.
Thank you. You've also promised me no long speeches, so we haven't stuck to that one either. Before we move on, quickly, Mr Johnson,
that was
under your...
very brief for Boris.
Thank you.
I thought Jeremy went on for an awful long time.
Gentlemen, under your plans, Mr Johnson, for immigration,
yes,
because some readers do care about this, and quickly before we move on, will immigration come down?
Well, the point of what I want to see with immigration is control. And
will the numbers come down?
Well, I'm not going to get into some numbers game with you, Tom. I think what we will have is control, which is what the people voted for, and it's high time they got it. And we will take back control of immigration. We'll have an Australian-style points-based system so that we welcome to this country the people who want to contribute to this country, but that we are able democratically to control it and to ensure that the UK economy, the interests of UK citizens are properly represented in those discussions.
Mr Hunt, will net immigration come down under you?
Thank you. Well, I actually agree with Boris about taking back control. That's what people voted for, but they also voted with an expectation that overall levels of net migration would come down. And I believe that people would think we were betraying the spirit of that Brexit referendum if we didn't find a way of bringing down overall numbers. The way that we do it, though, is what I did in the NHS, which is by increasing the number of doctors and nurses that we train in this country so that we don't need to bring in so many from other countries. So it's boosting the education and skills levels of our own people. That's the right way to do that.
Thank you, Mr Hunt. Let's go to our second question from the audience, and this is from Andrew Snarsky, who is a disaffected Tory voter. Andrew.
Gentlemen, the question I ask for both Boris and Jeremy is, who should the great British public put their trust in over Brexit and other issues, Boris or Jeremy?
Well, Andrew, I think I'm afraid modesty would normally forbid me from advertising my own credentials, but there's nothing for it. tonight, I'm going to argue to you that I think it's time we had somebody who campaigned for Brexit, who believes in it, who understands it, put in charge of this. I think we've had a lot of confusion and drift and dither for 3 years. It's time we made a positive case for this extraordinary project on which the nation has embarked. Brexit offers plenty of opportunities. We've had so much negativity, so much defeatism, I'm afraid even from parts of the UK government, about what we can do. I think the people of this country are entirely fed up of being told that they can't do X, Y, or Z, and it's time they had a leader who believes in this country, who believes in what we can do, and who wants to seize a truly global future, and that's my ambition.
Mr. Johnson. Mr. Hunt, you don't believe in this country, according to Mr. Johnson.
Andrew, who do the country trust? Boris, to put a smile on your face, and he does it better than anyone. But if you actually want the detailed delivery of Brexit, you have got to have a plan. You've got to have someone who the EU are prepared to sit down the negotiating table with and discuss the nitty-gritty of the backstop, the single biggest issue that we have failed to overcome to date. And the British people have also got to have a Prime Minister they know will not make promises that he cannot keep. And that is the most fundamental thing in politics. So sometimes that means someone who is going to grasp all those details and actually work out how we're going to get through these negotiations. And sometimes that means not saying things that are very appealing, like a so-called guarantee of leaving on a particular date, which I think Boris said to me last week that he wouldn't be prepared to resign if he didn't deliver it, which says to me that he's not quite so sure that he can guarantee it either. And let's be clear, what people want... I think Boris is going to come in now, but let's be clear. What people want is calm leadership and delivery, and that's what I offer.
Well, if I may say so... If I may say, we had exactly that approach for the last 3 years. We had all sorts of promises that we were going to leave on March the 29th. We were told a calm, methodical approach to the negotiations. I'm afraid it delivered absolutely nothing for the country because there was no clarity and no decision-making about the fundamental issues. And what is needed now is somebody who can get to the core of the argument, who can see what the real issue is. And that is, I'm afraid, that our EU friends and partners are only too happy to collaborate with elements in the UK government who would like to keep us pretty much locked in to the EU system. So what we need now is somebody who's genuinely willing to take us out of the EU. And that is what we will do on October the 31st. And I have no embarrassment or hesitation in repeating that deadline.
Mr. Hunt, both you and Mr. Johnson are up for a no-deal Brexit, if that's what it takes. Neither of you particularly want one. What if the House of Commons blocks your no-deal Brexit? What's your plan B, Mr. Hunt?
Well, the plan B is, the plan A is actually not to get there by negotiating a deal. And the way you minimise the risk of that happening is by maximising your chances of getting a deal, by having a plan over August and September, by sending a Prime Minister that the EU will have those very, very difficult conversations with. And I would say this, that the reason that we've not got to where we wanted to get to by this stage is not because of calm leadership, which I think Theresa May did show. It is because she had the wrong deal. And Boris and I were both in the Cabinet in December 2017.
I resigned it.
You resigned. Actually, Boris, let's be clear. Let's just actually get a little bit of accuracy here. You didn't resign when the backstop was agreed in December 2017. You stayed in the Cabinet. You were actually Foreign Secretary when that backstop was agreed. And that is the main reason why this deal didn't get through the House of Commons. Now we need to have a plan. I, by the way, voted for that backstop 3 times. You voted for it once before you mentioned it. And that is because I wanted us to be out of the EU today, and I would have preferred to have dealt with the problems of the backstop now. Having left the EU, I think we'd have been in a better position as a country. But be that as it may, the deal that is going to get through the House of Commons, the deal that is going to get us out of the EU, won't have that backstop, and that's what we've got to put right. And I think we've got a plan with technology, with trusted trader schemes, with a different approach to the one that we had, which kept us in the customs union, and that's what will succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mr. Johnson, you've said a no-deal Brexit would be vanishingly inexpensive if we prepare properly. My question is...
If we prepare properly.
Exactly.
If we prepare
so how much is it going to cost to prepare properly?
It depends how well we prepare. And I think, and we can make a very important point.
Well, can you answer that question? Because it doesn't sound like you've costed
I'm not going to give I'm not going to try to.
So you haven't costed a no deal.
No, the Treasury will produce all sorts of spine-chilling figures. Of course, it will. But actually, I think that if we get our act together in the way that we can minimise the costs of Brexit under any circumstances, and we can turn it into a fantastic opportunity. And the sad thing about the last 3 years is that actually you've had people in the UK government, senior figures, saying that a no-deal Brexit would be such a catastrophe that business hasn't even really been properly preparing for it. If you look at the 147,000 SMEs, small, medium-sized businesses that trade only with the rest of the EU, they haven't known what to do. Some of them have acquired the relevant customs forms. Most of them, 2/3 of them, haven't, because they keep hearing from the Treasury that a no-deal Brexit is completely unthinkable. The more we prepare, the better our preparations, the smoother Brexit under any circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Hunt, very quick comeback, if you want one.
Well, there are real costs for businesses, and they don't go away by pretending that if you introduce a 40% tariff on lamb exports to the EU, that doesn't provide a real cost to farmers. They might lose their European markets overnight. You know, on steel it'd be an 11% tariff. So there are real costs. I've announced a £6 billion plan of support for farmers and the fishing community, and a £14 billion plan of support for small businesses up and down the country with big cuts in corporation tax. So I think you can minimise the costs of a no-deal Brexit, but I don't think you can say they're vanishingly small.
Thank you. We're going to go to our next question, another Brexit question, which is about the Northern Ireland peace process. And this is from Lewis Frisbee, who's also a member of the Conservative Party.
Good evening, gentlemen. So I was fortunate enough in university to be able to study the Good Friday Agreement and the Northern Ireland peace process. And I was wondering, how would you make sure the Good Friday Agreement is protected in a no-deal Brexit scenario?
Well,
Mr. Johnson.
Well, thank you so much. And I think all sides agree that the text of the Good Friday Agreement must be respected and will continue to be respected. And I think all sides also agree that there is no need whatever to have hard infrastructure, to have physical checks at the border in Northern Ireland. And we won't do that. We, the UK government, won't do that. I can't believe that I don't think Jeremy would want to see that. Nobody wants to see that. And we certainly don't think that our friends in Dublin will want to see that either. And indeed, the European Commission is confident that such checks will not be necessary. So I think we need to approach this, and Jeremy has spoken about trusted trader schemes and checks away from the border. That's entirely right. Let's bring that spirit of optimism to this problem. You can solve the problem of frictionless trade at the Northern Irish border and elsewhere, but the correct place to do it, logically, is in the discussions on the free trade agreement that we will conclude after we have left on October the 31st. That's how to do it.
Mr. Hunt.
Well, Lewis, I met a couple of weeks ago someone from Newry, which is one of the border towns. And he was saying that in the time of the Troubles, they had unemployment of around 20%. But now, since the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, it's gone down to 2%, a total transformation. And the one thing that they all say is that we cannot have hard border infrastructure, because that would be a target for terrorists and would then put the whole peace process at risk. And that peace process, I think, by the way, is one of the greatest achievements of the last 20, 30 years, and we should all be very proud of that. So we need to find a solution, but it's got to be a solution that doesn't trap us in the customs union. And the problem with the backstop was that we were trapped in the customs union until such time as the EU deigned to give us permission to leave the customs union, which is why I always judged that it was never going to get through the House of Commons. And so I think the best proposals are ones that have been put together by two brilliant Conservative MPs, Greg Hands and Nicky Morgan. They've got something called the Alternative Arrangements Commission. They've got a report that's 202 pages long. But basically, it deals with the issue of technology. And it says that it can be done on existing technology. We don't need new technology. It also says that it wouldn't be possible to get this technology up and running immediately. It will take some time to do that. So you need a period of time while you're getting it up and running. And it would also be a combination of checks away from the borders. If you look at, for example, factories exporting from France to Switzerland, Their trucks are often not stopped at the Swiss border, they're checked at either end. So put all those things together. Why do I really think this can be done? Because that's what Michel Barnier once let slip when he was talking about their plans for a no-deal Brexit.
Mr. Hunt, sorry to interject, but the EU have already said they're not going to deal with alternative arrangements. They're not going to reopen the withdrawal agreement at all. It's all well and good, but they're not going to listen.
Well, actually what they said was they've accepted that there is a long-term solution in technology. What they're saying is at the moment they don't believe that the technology is there. But that, I think, is because, and I'm sure Boris would agree with this, because they obviously like the backstop when that was on the table, because that keeps us trapped in the customs
union. You're in danger of breaking out into a furious
I like
agreement.
the way Jeremy is talking now.
Good,
I like the new spirit of optimism.
Good. Join my cabinet, Boris.
Come on.
Before we...
I wouldn't be so impertinent.
No, I'm just inviting you. I think you're showing a lot of talent this evening.
I wouldn't be so impertinent just to... Before we use this opportunity to lobby you for a job.
Mr. Johnson, thank you.
You're so modest, Boris. That's one of your great qualities.
I may say,
not talking over each other.
I do. Sorry, forgive me. I just do think that what Jeremy has said is incredibly exciting and important because there are solutions. We can get over the problem of frictionless border at the Northern Irish border. All the more reason, therefore, to remit those solutions to the place they logically belong, which is after we've come out on October the 31st, and to commit to a hard deadline, which I think this country will.
One quick question before we move on to the pair of you. If the EU do agree to have a look at the backstop again, would you accept a 5-year time limit for it? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I think that the problems with the backstop, and I said I'm not attracted to, in a nutshell, no, is the answer, no, to time limits or unilateral escape hatches or all these kind of elaborate devices, glosses, codicils and so on that you could apply to the backstop. I think that the problem is very fundamental. It is really there. It has been devised by this country as an instrument of our own incarceration within the customs union and the single market. And
I'll take that note. I'll take that note.
Come out.
Mr. Hunt, would you?
The backstop, as it is dead. And so I agree with Boris. I don't think tweaking it with a time limit will do the trick. We've got to find a new way. But the thing that mustn't die, and if we're going to get a deal agreed, we will have to recognise this, is an absolute cast-iron commitment to the Republic of Ireland that we will not have border infrastructure. So what they liked in the backstop was the fact that it guaranteed that. If we're going to solve this, we've got to find another way of guaranteeing them that same thing. And I think Boris and I both think there is potential to do that.
And that is the right way forward.
OK, thank you very much. We're going to go to the next question. Dina Hallett has the next question. Dina is also a member of the Conservative Party. Dina. Deanna, I'm so sorry.
That's fine. Completely hypothetical situation, but potentially very real. In the event that your deal cannot get through, would you rather a second referendum or a general election?
Mr. Hunt.
Neither. I would rather...
You do have to address the question.
Yes, no, I've said, exactly. And it is precisely because I will not accept either of those that I think it is dangerous to have that hard deadline that Boris has been talking about. Because if you're saying, as I think Boris, I'm just going to quote those exact words, do or die, come what may, you're going to leave on that date. If Parliament then blocks that, the only thing you can do to keep that promise to the British people is change Parliament, have an election. And I think if we have an election before we've left the European Union, we just need to look at what happened at the Peterborough by-election. We got squeezed by the Brexit Party on the right, the Lib Dems on the left. Who came through the middle? The Labour Party. Incredibly dangerous. And all the polls show, it doesn't matter who our next Prime Minister is, it would be the same result. If we have an election before we Brexited, we would have a Labour, Lib Dem, SNP coalition and no Brexit at all.
Mr. Johnson, which would you choose?
Say, I think that I refuse to choose between either of those options. I dimly recollect that my adversary recommended a second referendum after June.
Democratic endorsement, and that we had with the general election.
Okay. Oh, you wanted a democratic endorsement.
We had it with the general election.
Sorry, I misunderstood in that case. Forgive me, but I don't want either a second referendum or a general election. But I think that what will increase the risk of a general election, and indeed increase the risk of a Corbyn government, is if we continually kick the can down the road. And I don't know whether you noticed, but at the recent European Parliament elections, our great party, the Conservative Party, scored a staggering 8.8% in the poll because people are totally fed up and they see us failing to get Brexit across the line. They now hear again, yet again, that we are prepared to dither and drift and delay beyond the deadline of October.
Mr. Johnson, we saw that. We saw the European election results. We followed that one.
I don't think we will easily recover if we delay again.
Can I ask you, you said at the ITV debate last week, you mentioned the forthcoming election. Rather sounds like you're planning one. What do you mean by forthcoming election?
Well, obviously there will. This country will remain an elective democracy, and we will have a.
But forthcoming sounds quite soon.
Not even the Sun has any plans to change that, I trust. We will, particularly not the Sun, I should say, and we will have an election at some stage in 2022.
So you will rule out a general election.
2022.
Mr. Johnson, you'll rule out a general election before Brexit is delivered?
Absolutely. I think, as I've just said, I think it would be the height of folly. There are several points. First of all, I think the people of this country are utterly fed up with politicians coming back to them with more elections and offering more referendums and all the rest of it. It's totally wrong. What they want us to do is get on and deliver what they told us to do on June the 23rd, 2016, and they're fed up with waiting.
How are you going to govern with a majority of 3? Because that's what you're facing. People might defect, people might go upstairs, anything could happen.
I think that the politics has changed since March the 29th, when we failed to come out, and I think that lots of our colleagues, Jeremy and I's colleagues not just on the Conservative benches, but on Labour benches as well, can see this fatal hemorrhage of trust to the Brexit Party and to the Liberal Democrats, because they're both basically feeding on the same decay, like twin puffballs, as it were, sacrificially feeding on the same sense of decay and trust in politics. And until we get Brexit done, they will continue to attract hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of votes. And that's why we've got to turn this thing round, be very determined, and get Brexit over the line by October the 31st.
Mr. Hunt.
Well, I'm not sure that we got an answer to Deanna's question there, because if we forget, well, this is not just about optimism and hope. Both of us want to leave by October the 31st. Both of us hope Parliament doesn't block a no-deal Brexit. But it did block a no-deal Brexit just in March. And there are people who are trying to do exactly the same thing. And we may have a reduced majority which I very much hope we don't, we lose the forthcoming by-election. And so that is why I think we've got to be very careful. If we get this wrong, we will trip ourselves into an accidental general election. Long before October the 31st, and we will give the keys of Downing Street to someone who will never deliver Brexit. And that would be the biggest betrayal of all. So this is not just about the determination and hunger to do what the British people told us to do, which is to get out of the EU. This is also about having a sensible plan that maximises our chances of doing it. And I don't think that it is being any less enthusiastic about Brexit to be honest with people about the challenges we face, because I think we're more likely to overcome those challenges if we face them head on rather than pretend they don't exist.
Mr. Hunt, thank you. Thank you. You're listening to the final showdown, a head-to-head debate between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt, live on the Sun and TalkRADIO. We go to our final Brexit question, please. And this is from Rachel Cole, who's also a Tory member.
How likely is a trade deal with the US once we have left the EU with all the demands the US will put on us?
I'll go
first. Mr. Hunt.
Well, I actually think it is very likely. And I think that we may talk about some of the other things that President Trump has done or said recently later on in this debate. But I would say that one of the things that has most impressed me every time I've met him and every time I've met people in his administration, it is stressed how enthusiastic the US are to do a trade deal with us. And when we are trying to encourage the EU to do a trade deal with us, around half our exports go to the EU, then I think one of the best bits of leverage we have is to be making very good progress in the discussions that we have in a trade deal with the United States. I don't think it's something that we will be able to do incredibly quickly. Trump is a very shrewd and tough negotiator. And I think Boris has also said this. I think this is something we should go for as quickly as we can, and it will help us get the trade deal we need with Europe.
Mr. Hunt, you have avoided the point of the question, I think, if you don't mind me saying so, which is the US are going to have quite a few demands for us as trade deal. We know them all: chlorinated chicken, private healthcare provision, massive amounts of cheap US grain. You'll sign up to all of those, or will you sign up to none of this?
Well, let's just knock on the head one of those, because we are not going to put the NHS up for sale in any trade deal. We've made that clear, and actually President Trump has also made that clear that that wasn't what he meant in some comments of his that were misinterpreted. Not the first time some of his comments have been misinterpreted. But look, this will be a trade deal where there will be some difficult negotiations, which is why I don't think it's going to happen overnight. But they are very keen to do something. And I actually think with goodwill on both sides, which I think there would be on this occasion, I think we could do a trade deal which doesn't affect the standards, the high standards we have in our agriculture industry here, and gets us that incredible market access that could be so good for our farmers and fishermen.
Mr. Johnson, do you accept there is a price to pay if we want to do a deal with the US? They give us something, we've got to give them something. What are we going to give?
Well, I certainly think that we can start trade negotiations with the US right away. The biggest and most important trade deal will of course be with our European Union.
Boris, sorry, we can't. It's illegal under EU law.
But no, you can begin negotiating a trade deal as soon as you've left. Of course you can, and we should do that. And we can't at the moment because we have a duty of sincere cooperation, as you know. But once we've left on October the 31st, correct? We will be able to. Jeremy, note. We will be able to.
My birthday's on the 1st of November, so I actually do know this part of the year very well.
We will be able to do free trade.
And it's going to be a great birthday present when Prime Minister Jeremy Hunt delivers Brexit.
Mr. Hunt. It will be. It will be. Could amen to that, Jeremy. But listen, just on your question about doing a free trade deal with Trump. It is very important that we are realistic about this, because I remember covering a lot of the Uruguay round. I watched the way the Americans negotiate. They are ruthless. They will be very, very tough with us. And yes, Jeremy is right. There will be, or perhaps it was Tom actually. I'm sure you're right about something, Jeremy. But Tom was right when he said they will put tough conditions, whether it's on accepting US agricultural products or whatever. That doesn't mean it's impossible to do a great deal. There are ways in which we can open up US markets, whether it's in services, in aviation, and there are things that we want to export to the UK agricultural products that they still won't have in America. Haggis, for instance. Yeah, okay. And the Americans ban haggis.
Chlorinated chicken.
And I'm not in favour of doing anything, of importing anything from the United States that involves lower animal welfare standards or lower hygiene in the UK. And we should use our negotiating leverage with the states if they want to do it. And Donald Trump is very clear he wants to do a free trade deal. Fantastic. Well, let's encourage that. But we should use that as an incentive to get them to lift their standards to match ours if they want to do a free trade deal. I think that's the sensible way forward.
Mr. Hunt, the Chancellor today said a trade deal with the US within 12 months of us leaving the EU after Brexit is going to be impossible. Do you agree with the Chancellor of the government you're in?
I think he's right to say that it's challenging. I don't know of trade deals of that complexity that have been completed within 12 months. What I would say is that this is a very unusual American administration, and they want to do things differently. And I think that there is tremendous will on their side. And I really do think there is tremendous will to do something quickly. So whether we could do it in 12 months or not, I don't know. But I think we could do it a lot faster than would be the norm.
Mr. Johnson, sort of go over slightly old ground, but there's still some doubt whether you're going to stand up to Donald Trump, isn't there? Kim Darroch last week, by your own words on Friday, these were your words on Friday, you said you could have been more emphatic that Kim Darroch had my support. So you did let him down a bit.
I was very sad that when Kim resigned, and I rang him to say that. And clearly, what I said to him and what I said in the debate is the most important thing. That I stand foursquare behind our officials, our diplomats, when they write memos or diptels to politicians, to their political masters. They've got to be able to express themselves in whatever language they choose without fear or favour, and it's up to their political masters to decide how to take that. I think the real culprit in all this is the individual who leaked this stuff. And I want him or her to be found out and properly prosecuted for clearly breaking the terms of their employment.
Mr. Hunt, do you want to come back on that?
Well, look, I don't want to talk about what Boris did, but I just want to make this point that we have one of the best diplomatic networks in the world in this country. It's actually the third biggest after America and China. And our diplomats are bloody brilliant. And one of the reasons that we have so much influence in the world is because our diplomats are really respected. And they have to know that they can talk without fear or favour, give us their total, unvarnished, honest personal views about the countries they're in. And so I am very, very sad that we've lost one of our very best ones. And I hope that all our diplomats, there's 13,000 people in the Foreign Office, recognise that after this they really will get 150% support from the entire British government and British establishment because we owe no less to them.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, thank you. Who should appoint Kim Darroch's successor, Theresa May or the next Prime Minister?
Well, I think there's a constitutional convention in a situation like this. It is the Prime Minister's job to decide both who that person should be and the timescale. Normally it would take longer than a couple of weeks to go through that process, and he was due to retire at the end of the year, and there is a sort of process that's in its earlier stages. If she wanted to expedite it, normally she would consult her potential successors before coming to a final decision. But I haven't heard anything on that front, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Mr. Johnson, do you want to appoint Kim Darroch if you're Prime Minister, or Kim Darroch's successor?
Look, I think that there's a very clear process to be gone through, and there's no need to accelerate it. And Sir Kim's successor will be appointed in the normal way. And if I'm lucky enough to be successful in this contest, I would, of course, do that myself.
You wouldn't insist on it being you? You wouldn't insist on it being you?
Sorry, well, I would
you would insist on it being you?
Yes, of course, and I think any Prime Minister...
Theresa May not doing it and the next Prime Minister doing it.
I think any Prime Minister would insist on having a say, working with the Foreign Secretary, having a say in the appointment of a hugely important diplomat in our most important ally. Of course he would.
Mr. Hunt, Theresa May has condemned President Trump today for telling 4 black and Asian congresswomen, and a Hispanic one as well, to, and I quote President Trump here, go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. Theresa May has called that completely unacceptable. Do you agree with her?
Yes, I do. I have 3 half-Chinese children, and if anyone, and they're British citizens, born on the NHS, and if anyone ever said to them, go back to China, I would be utterly appalled. And I would say something else. It is totally un-British to do that. So I hope that would never happen in this country.
Mr. Johnson.
Well, I have to say, I think that relations between the UK, I've said what I've said about the relations between the UK and the US are incredibly important. But if you're the leader of a great multiracial, multicultural society, you simply cannot use that kind of language about sending people back to where they came from. I mean, that went out decades and decades ago, and thank heavens for that. So it's totally unacceptable. I agree with the Prime Minister. Not for the first time, I mean.
Was it a racist remark by President Trump?
I've said what I said. I think it was totally unacceptable in a modern, multiracial country which you're trying to lead. I simply can't understand how a leader of that country could come to say that.
Why wouldn't you condemn it as racist then?
Well, you can take from what I've said what I think about President Trump's words.
Mr. Hunt, was it racist, Mark?
I think that, look, I'm Foreign Secretary. This is the President of the country which happens to be our closest ally. And so it is not going to help the situation to use that kind of language about the President of the United States. I can understand how many people in this country would want politicians like me to use those words and would feel that sentiment. But I will make absolutely clear, I hope I have made absolutely clear how totally offensive it is to me that people are still saying that kind of thing.
Thank you. Finally, on this point, quickly before we go to the break, if President Trump, your Prime Minister, President Trump says to you, look, I need to go to war with Iran now because I need to stop them from making a nuclear arsenal, and that is the only way to do it, would you be with them, Mr. Johnson?
I have to say that I don't think I would. I'm going to be very candid with you all tonight. If you say that going to war with Iran now represents a sensible option for us in the West, I just don't believe it is. I think the way forward, I think it's very, very sad to see what's happening, the potential breakdown of the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, but diplomacy must be the best way forward. The Iranians have a real incentive to engage with the West, to derive economic benefits from the West in return for not developing their nuclear program. Let's get back on the diplomatic path. And I must say I rather agreed with the letter that the UK and other European Union countries sent today to try to encourage a return to diplomacy. I'm not going to pretend that the mullahs of Tehran are, easy people to deal with, or that they're anything other than a disruptive, dangerous, difficult regime. They certainly are. But I'm not convinced. If you ask me whether I think we should now, were I to be Prime Minister now, would I be supporting military action against Iran? Then the answer is no.
Mr. Hunt, the President rings you, says, I need your help. We're going to take out their enriching uranium plants and their stocks.
Now, I'm on exactly the same page as Boris on this one. I don't think, from numerous conversations that I've had with both the President and his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who Boris also knows very well, I don't think they are looking for any kind of war. And by the way, I don't think the Iranians
are 50 minutes away from a missile strike.
Yes, but I don't think they are looking to do any kind of war. I really don't. The risk we have is something different, which is an accidental war, because something happens in a very tense and volatile situation. People misunderstand the other one's motives, and so what we are working to do at the moment is to try and de-escalate as many of the tensions as we possibly can, because this is the one part of the world where if things go wrong, they can go wrong in a very big and bad way, and that's why we've absolutely got to be on our watch.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. That's the end of the first half of the final showdown. After this short 2-minute break, we'll be back with more questions for Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt about domestic policy and also themselves.
Listening to that final showdown, Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson in the battle for number 10 with myself, Ian Collins. Talk Radio's political editor, Ross Kempsell, is here. Salient points: Boris unequivocal that Brexit could be delivered, wouldn't explain how he might pay for a no deal. Jeremy Hunt says he can solve the Irish border problem, wouldn't explain quite how or when that might happen. Both ruling out a general election, both insisting they can deal with the USA despite their comments on Donald Trump's words today. And a nice side dish, Ross, Jeremy offered Boris a place in the cabinet.
Huge news lines out of this debate so far, Ian, and we're only halfway through it. The top news line, really, I think for me, is that both Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson have basically called the backstop completely dead. Now, they've been campaigning, both of them, on that basis to some extent, but both ruled out tonight any kind of 5-year time limit, any kind of unilateral exit mechanism. That is significant because it was always thought that might be a backup element in Boris Johnson's arsenal should he get to October. Likewise, in the Talk Radio interview we did with him a little bit earlier, he made similar steps towards it, but that's categorical from Mr. Hunt as well. And likewise, ruling out a general election, both candidates before 2022. Mr. Johnson said there would be an election at some point in 2022, but that's big to rule out a general election before Brexit.
But we still didn't get, even from Boris Johnson, there wasn't that sense, watching and listening to that it is a done deal that October the 31st we leave. We didn't sense that is absolutely 100% from Boris Johnson.
I mean, it was a fiery start to the debate. I think both candidates went in studs up at times. Both were trying to comment on each other's personal records and history. Big difference on immigration numbers. Jeremy Hunt said he would bring them down. Boris Johnson didn't. And that last exchange on racism was absolutely fascinating from both.
Let's move to part two. It is the final showdown live on Talk Radio. Boris Johnson and...
From the News UK building in London, this is the final showdown. Jeremy Hunt versus Boris Johnson. Brought to you by the Sun and TalkRADIO.
This is much nicer.
Welcome back to London Bridge, where tonight Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt are engaged in their last head-to-head debate for the Tory leadership contest, the final showdown. Before one of them becomes Prime Minister next week, we are live on the Sun website and TalkRADIO. In the first half, we talked about Brexit a lot. We're now turning to policy at home, as well as the character of the two candidates themselves. Sam Barker has the next question. Sam is a Sun reader and Conservative voter.
So a huge part of your job is to bring back the nation together. So what would you do to change the view of MPs being no more than self-serving posh boys?
Oh, self-serving posh boys.
Boris Johnson.
Well, I think that the number one thing that we've got to do to bring the nation back together, whatever background we may come from, is to show that we're serving the people and not ourselves by getting Brexit over the line. That's what we should be doing. The people voted for this thing 3 years ago. We asked them whether they wanted, we asked them their opinion. They gave it. A pretty substantial majority, considering all the forces that were arguing the other way. It was amazing that 17.4 million voted to leave. And for 3 years, politicians, posh, self-serving or otherwise, have sat around in Westminster basically dithering and dickering around and not getting it done. And I think the best thing we can do now is push Brexit over the line, get it done, and then launch a vision of conservatism that is all about bringing the country together and showing actually that if the reason we back wealth creators, and the reason we back business, the reason we back enterprise is not just because those are good things in themselves, though they are, but because that's the way to pay for fantastic infrastructure and a great NHS and everything else that we need. And that is what our modern conservatism is all about. It's a brilliant symmetry. And there's one guy who doesn't understand it, of course, and that is Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. And they are the real threat to our country.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Sam, posh boys. Yeah, as a Charterhouse boy, I'm never going to criticise Boris for going to Eton. That would be totally wrong. And I say this, I think we have, in the Conservative Party, not done enough to show that we have the broad background of people in our party that represents the country we want to serve. And absolutely Boris is right to talk about Brexit. But actually one of the problems is that they don't hear Conservatives talking enough about other issues that worry ordinary families. Issues like the cost of living, the difficulty of getting onto the housing ladder, the fact that rent is extremely expensive if you haven't been able to get onto the housing ladder, and also public services like our schools, our NHS, under a lot of pressure in recent years. So the way that we communicate that vision, I think, is both by broadening the talents of the MPs in Parliament and showing people that we are party really of all the talents of people of all backgrounds, but also by focusing on issues that don't just matter in the Westminster bubble.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, you just said you went to Charterhouse, you just said Boris went to Eton, you both went to
I have a
Oxford.
scholarship, by the way.
Well,
I did too.
In fact, interestingly, Mr. Johnson, you referred to Opperden Britain in an interview with The Spectator last week. What does that mean?
Well, if you look at... There's a fascinating thing about what's happening in this country.
What does Opperden mean?
It means of a town. So if you look at what's happening in this country, the city, London, is doing unbelievably well. It's still, in spite of the depredations of the current mayor, who isn't nearly as good as the last guy, in my view. London is doing well. The great cities, the core cities of the UK...
I agree with you, Boris.
Yeah, well, no, we've been in glutinous harmony for too much of this programme. So
you really have. So I'm going to stop.
The core cities are doing well, but there are about 500 towns in the UK that don't necessarily get the support and investment that they need. They don't get full fibre broadband that they need. They don't have proper funding for their education and other services. And that's what we want to do. We want to lift up the whole country. The mission for the Conservatives in post-Brexit Britain is not only to take advantage of Brexit and to be much more positive about our country and about what it can achieve, but also to unite the country, to bring Britain together with better infrastructure, with better education, and with technology such as full fibre broadband. That is the agenda, and that will transform the lives of people in towns across this country who basically feel left behind, and that was one of the messages of Brexit.
Questions about diversity. Diversity issues really haven't come at all in this issue contest. LGBT rights either. Why is that? Are the Conservative Party members not interested in it? Mr. Hunt.
Well, they came up in the very first hustings we had in Birmingham, when we were asked about LGBT issues in Birmingham schools. But as you've asked the question, let me say that I think one of the things that I am most proud of in the last 8 years is that it was a Conservative government that legalised gay marriage. And I think that is a very, very big step forward for our country.
Mr. Johnson?
Well, I totally, I mustn't agree too much with Jeremy, but I think that
Have you voted yet?
I think he is too late for that, Jeremy. But look, this is one of the things where I think the Conservatives can be very proud of our record. We did legalise equal marriage. I was very proud that when I was mayor, I think I walked the whole Pride March with a pink Stetson. And the first thing I ever did when I became Foreign Secretary, literally the first thing I did was to change the rule so that embassies around the world could fly the Pride flag. Because for some reason it had been decided that it would be provocative in some countries, and I said, absolutely not. We stand for our values. And our values, I think, are the right values. They're the inclusive and tolerant values.
So when you wrote in a column in 1998 about tank-topped bum boys in the Ministry of Sound, you're going to apologise for that now.
Look, I think if you're going to excavate and disinter,
just simple whether you're right or wrong to have done it.
Single quotation from the millions of words I have written. You can of course try and twist things one way or the other, but I have a very, very long and proud record. Let me do. I think when I first came into Parliament, there was a rebellion on the issue of equal marriage, and there were only three members of the Conservative Party who actually supported equal marriage, and they were me and David Cameron and George Osborne. So I've been at it for a very long time. I totally believe in it. It's the right way forward for our country and for our party.
Thank you. What about women? Mr. Hunt, would you give a woman one of the top 4 great offices of state? You know those jobs. Chancellor, Foreign Secretary, Defence Secretary.
I'd give a woman any job, or all the jobs if the right people were there. But absolutely.
I should say, will you?
Will I? Well, I haven't had a discussion with Boris about which role he might do amongst those 4 jobs. And
I'm not going to help you. But I'm not going to help you with your gender quota, much as it might think might.
So that's you've got such liberal views on gay marriage. We've now heard that you would absolutely fit in very well. So. Look, of course, I think we need to get much more gender balance in the government.
Of course you will give a woman a top 4 job?
Absolutely.
Boris Johnson.
I think I had to answer this question the other night, and I can't remember what. I came up with some very, very clever formula. I can't remember what it was. I will make sure. When I ran City Hall, it was more or less half and half. Men and women at the top of my administration. I believe profoundly in equality, obviously, but I also think that women can make a fantastic difference to the quality of
So, top 4 job, yes or no?
Top 4 job, I think I'm going to say yes. Depending on what you mean by top 4, obviously, but in which one. Right. But yes, I think so. Yes.
Treasury, Foreign Office, Defence.
Well, there you go. I've chucked it out there. You make of it what you will.
Thank you. OK. I'm sure we will. Let's go to the next question.
That doesn't come under the category of measuring up the curtains. I'm not being complacent about it.
OK.
I'm just saying that if in an ideal world, were I to be in that situation, then I would.
Thank you. Our next question comes to us from Stefan Hopewell, who is a Sun reader and Conservative voter.
Hi, both. I was just wondering, how important do you think charisma is in the role of Prime Minister?
Jeremy Hunt.
I think it is very important. The question is, what is charisma? And charisma is optimism, but it is optimism based on the confidence of being someone who has a plan, who can deliver those plans and can lead people so that they come behind you and help you execute those plans. Charisma is also telling people sometimes things they don't want to hear. That actually, for me, is the true definition of leadership. It's actually being prepared to explain to people sometimes difficult truths, which, as Prime Minister, you have to do regularly. So when I was Health Secretary, for example, I took a number of very difficult decisions. But at the end of my time, 3 million more patients were using good or outstanding hospitals, and I was very proud that I took those decisions. So I think charisma matters, but part of that has to be actual solid delivery, because the British people are not fools. They know a Prime Minister who promises and then doesn't deliver, and that's not charisma, that is trickery.
You accused Boris Johnson of peddling optimism with his charisma in the last debate. Was that a compliment or an insult?
Well, I think optimism is one of Boris's great qualities. I really do. And I actually, one thing he said in that debate was that we need more optimism in British politics, and I agree with that. But I think optimism has to be credible. It has to be based on promising things that you really can make happen. Otherwise, you just end up with disappointment further down the track. So I think it's about the right type of optimism, the right type of charisma. And if you do that in this country, the sky's the limit.
Mr. Johnson?
Well, I agree very much with that. I think the crucial thing is perhaps not so much charisma as a determination to do the things that you say that you're going to do and a belief in it. And I think the problem we've had over the last 3 years is that the British people have been told that they can't really do something that they've told the politicians they want to do. And I think people are getting thoroughly disheartened and fed up. And what is now needed is some determination actually to get this thing done and get it over the line. I just, since we're looking at people's ability to deliver things, I just remind you, when I used to run the great city that we're now in, we massively reduced, for instance, the numbers of young people who were dying from knife violence, and which was a huge problem when I came in. We cut the murder rate by about 50%. We outbuilt Labour enormously when it came to the provision of affordable homes. We had a huge increase in capacity of our tube. We cut delays by 30%. And if you look at what we did at the Foreign Office, where there was a very tough challenge that we were set to. You remember, Jeremy, by the government. We had to expel some Russia, encourage other countries to join the UK in expelling Russian spies in support of the UK after the poisonings in Salisbury. And we thought we'd be lucky to get a handful of spies expelled around the world. In the end, we got 28 countries to expel 153 Russian diplomats. And when you consider the penalties, the reprisals those countries would face from Putin for daring to do that, that was quite a diplomatic achievement. And
okay.
I just venture to say that when I'm asked to do something, I generally over-deliver in a good way.
Mr. Hunt, you've been accused by some of trying to boost your own charisma by bringing your wife out with you on the campaign trail. Not by me, by some. How do you plead? Is that unfair?
I plead guilty. She's massively more charismatic than me. She's an amazing woman. I'm very lucky to have her. Thank you.
Thank you. You know what's coming now, Mr. Johnson. We've seen a lot of Mrs. Hunt. We haven't seen a lot of your partner with you. How much do the British voters have a right to know about a politician's private life when they're about to be Prime Minister and represent us on the biggest stage in the land?
Yeah. Well, I was going to echo very much what Jeremy had to say about his own wife. But on my own life, look, and my family and my loved ones, I took a decision ages ago, long before I think I even became Mayor of London, which was I just don't talk about people I love, because in the end, if you drag them into the public debate, they can't answer for themselves, they can't speak for themselves, and you drag them into subjects and areas of controversy and discussion that they don't, in my view, necessarily deserve or want. So I've had a pretty ruthless rule of not commenting on that side of things. And I don't intend, if I may, to break it after...
That's understandable,
30 years or whatever it is.
It's a trust thing, isn't it? The more we know about you, the more we can appreciate what you're doing and trust in what you're doing. We don't even know who you're going to be living in Downing Street with. Can you tell us?
Well, again, I don't want to get into any kind of presumptuous, theorising about living in Downing Street at all.
I can answer that question. He'll be living with me. He'll be at number 11 and I'll be at number 10.
Very good. Mr. Johnson, you were
hang on a minute. Did I get that right? Am I being offered the post of Chancellor in Germany?
You're obfuscating.
I think that is the closest you've come to an inducement to collaborate so far in this campaign. It's breaking out into outrageous harmony.
Right. You're also.
It's got to end.
For the record, you didn't answer the question, and you know that, don't you?
I did answer the question in the sense that I declined to comment, as I have done for 30 years or whatever, on my private life and so on. There you go. That's as much as you're going to get out of me tonight, Dom, and you can keep going, but that's it.
Okay, thank you.
And I also think what the people of this country want to hear, frankly, in the very brief time that they've got is, what are we going to do to stimulate enterprise? What are our plans for helping people with the NHS? What are we going to do to improve education in this country? What are our ideas to take the UK forward? And we've got a fantastic programme, as I say, boosting education, putting another 20,000 police officers out on the streets thank you for that small ripple of applause.
Very good, thank you very much.
Which I think
Mr. Johnson, thank you.
And I may say so, fighting crime with another 20,000 police officers is of more direct relevance or interest to the
we're going to go to the next question.
Country.
Simon Schneider would like to ask.
I may or may not live in Downing Street.
Thank you. Thank you. Simon Schneider is going to ask the next question. And Simon is a Sun reader. He's also a Labour voter. Simon.
Good evening. Obviously, not all Sun readers are Conservative voters. I'd like to ask you, what's the changes to the tax system you would make that would help the people who are worse off in this country?
Well,
you heard that?
I did, yes.
The one change you'll make to the tax system to help the worst off in the country.
I think there's a number of things that you can do, but one of the most obvious is to lift the thresholds, for instance, of national insurance for those on low pay. But I would also mention the living wage, which I believe absolutely passionately, and which I think is just and fair and engenders much greater loyalty, productivity. It's a fantastic thing for companies to do, and we hugely expanded it here in London when I was mayor, and I was delighted to say that policy was then nicked by George Osborne and turned into a national Conservative policy, and quite right, and it's put millions of pounds into the pockets of some of the poorest families in this country, and that is the way forward. But the best way to help the poorest and the neediest in society is to continue to support wealth creation of all kinds. I just point out that when I began
about a tax change.
Well, so for instance, cutting taxes such as corporation tax to drive economic growth. If you look at what happened in London when I was running the city, actually, we began with 4 of the 6 poorest boroughs anywhere in the UK. We ended with none of the poorest 20 after 2 terms, and that was because the whole city had got richer, but it was the bottom quartile, the poorest 25%, who had seen the greatest increase in their prosperity and in their life expectancy. So that is what, we should be, as Conservatives, we should be making that moral case for supporting enterprise, for supporting markets, for supporting a free market system, because that is the way you pay for the poorest and the neediest. And ultimately, there will be no money for the NHS unless we also have a strong and dynamic economy.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt.
Simon, we don't have in the national kitty as much money as I would like to cut taxes for people on low incomes as much as I would want to right now. But let me tell you what I believe we should do as soon as we can afford it. I'm very proud that we raised the threshold at which you pay income tax to £12,500. It was a very expensive reform. It's taken us 8-9 years to get there, but I think it's made a huge difference. But I would like to do that for national insurance as well, because I think everyone in this country should be able to earn £1,000 every month without paying any tax or any national insurance, because I think the cost of living is such that is the least we can do for people. So when we manage to grow the economy, when we next in the business of making significant tax cuts, my commitment to you is I will do that before I do any tax cuts for people on higher incomes, because I think that is the most important tax cut we can offer.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. There's been a lot of controversy about your plan to raise the high rate of income tax from 50 grand to 80 grand for the most well-off. Can I just confirm, is that still a hard policy?
Well, I do think it's a bit odd that there's been so much controversy, as you say, Tom. When you consider that there are police inspectors, there are senior nurses, there are heads of maths department who are now being captured, paying the higher rate of tax. And I'm one of those who believes that basically people should, wherever possible, be able to spend their own money as much as they can without the depredations of the tax man.
So it is still a policy, is it?
So I do think it is reasonable for us to look at ways of taking those middle income earners, great public servants, out of the higher rate of tax. And if that isn't a debate that Conservatives can have, then goodness knows, why on earth? That is a very, very important thing that we should be doing. And by the way, the distinction that I would draw.
Okay, so it's a debate, not a policy.
I think we should be lifting people on middle incomes out of the higher rate of tax. And by the way, the rate that we have defined is exactly the same one as the Labour Party assigns to working households. And I would point, and the distinction to be made is with our approach, which is to have a high wage, low tax economy for all, and Jeremy Corbyn's approach, which is to tax inheritance, pensions, corporation tax, income, you name it. He put corporation tax up to the highest level in Europe. He put income tax up to 50p in the pound. He taxed gardens.
We're not debating Mr. Corbyn. He's not here.
No, it's very important because that is the threat that we face. He taxed houses and gardens. And I pointed out to the people of Sevenoaks the other day, they'd have to change their name to Three Oaks as a result of what Corbyn would do. There is a clear choice before this country. It's whether you believe in the symmetry of modern conservatism, supporting a strong dynamic market economy and fantastic public services, or whether you believe in the old Labour tax and spend, which was discredited 30
Allow
years.
Mr. Hunt to come back.
I would love the idea of reducing taxes for everyone. I can remember when Geoffrey Howe reduced the top rate of tax from 98% to, I think it was 63%, and Nigel Lawson then brought it down to 40%. It had a very galvanising effect on the economy, and Conservatives should want to reduce the tax burden on everyone. But I think we also have to be careful about the message that we send out to the country about our priorities. I'm thinking of Sam's question about the posh boys and what are you going to do for ordinary people, and I think it's very important that we don't inadvertently play into the message that Jeremy Corbyn so wants to project about our party. He wants to say you're the party of the rich, you just look after yourself, you're the party of London and the South East. We have to show that we are the party of everyone. So I think we have to be very careful how we do those kinds of tax cuts.
Mr. Hunt, Amber Rudd yesterday, the Work and Pension Secretary, asked both of you, in fact, to end the 4-year-long now freeze on working age benefits, uprate it with inflation next year, which benefits the average recipient of £200. Will you?
I'm certainly look at that very sympathetically. I don't want to make policy on the hoof. Amber makes a very, very powerful case. She has persuaded me that we do need to end the 5-week wait before people can claim universal credit, which I think is the right reform, but I think had unintended consequences when people had that wait early on. So she is someone who cares passionately about social justice. So I think if she recommended it, I would look at it very sympathetically.
Mr. Johnson?
Well, it looks like I've got a great respect for what Amber is doing at DWP, trying to tackle the issues around universal credit, making sure people get paid early enough. But when it comes to the 4-year freeze, I think I probably made enough spending commitments in the last week. For the time being, I think what I'm going to do is
1.5 billion. Not that much.
Thank you. I'm going to have a look at it and see what we can do to help. But I don't want, if I may, I'm just going to, rather like Jeremy, I think I'm going to avoid making a policy right now, exciting and interesting though it might be to do so. I think Amber makes a good point, but we'll look at it.
Would you like the job in DWP, Boris?
Well, I wouldn't want to displace Amber. I think she's, you know, and I'm not certain that she would. I think she'd be rather alarmed to hear you say that.
So it sounds like
Jeremy offering her job at this late hour. I thought she was on your team.
She is a very valued member of it.
It does also sound like
you just offered me her job. I don't wish to. Amber may very well be listening to this debate.
It does sound like Amber Rudd's going to be on your team, though, Mr. Johnson.
Sorry.
After watching, Amber Rudd will be on your team now. She's said enough about no deal to get a job in your cabinet.
Well, look, I think both Jeremy and I are fans of Amber. I note that she has said something, progressive about the importance of keeping no deal in our armoury as we go forward towards Brexit on October the 31st, and that's great. And I think that, I think genuinely what is starting to happen in our party is that optimism and common sense are starting to break out.
Okay.
And people can see that actually we've got to get this thing done, and we can get it done.
Next question. Amara Garcia, I probably horrendously mispronounced that one as well. Conservative Party member. Please fire away.
Hi guys, so housing is ridiculously expensive, and for young people like myself, owning property seems next to impossible, let alone being able to afford rent. What are your plans for solving this looming and extremely important issue? Thank you.
Let me go first. I can still remember when I bought my first flat when I think I was 29, in Barons Court, West London. It's a great moment. But I actually found some statistics that showed that since then, that was 30 years ago, or nearly 30 years ago, the incomes of people in their 20s has gone up by about 20%. House prices have gone up by nearly 3 times. It has become massively harder for your generation to buy a house than for ours. Now, Margaret Thatcher had a brilliant policy called Right to Buy, where she helped 1.5 million council house tenants get on the housing ladder. She made a lot of them into Conservatives in the process because they became part of our national dream, and we are a property-owning democracy. So I've got a plan called Right to Own that will help 1.5 million young people get on the housing ladder by giving them land that has planning permission, so that all they have to finance from the cost of the mortgage is the cost of actually building it, which is usually, certainly in somewhere like London, a lot less expensive than the cost of the land. So that's what I would do.
Mr. Johnson.
Well, I think that one of the reasons that young people feel so alienated from our party, and indeed from the Labour Party, is that people aren't offering enough hope for the homes that they need. And if you look at France and Germany, they now have higher levels of owner occupation for under 40s than we do in the UK. What we must do is build much more good quality homes for part-by-part rent, so that young people at least have the possibility of having a share in the equity of their home, even if they can't yet get a mortgage on the whole thing. And there are all sorts of ways that you can help them, including the scheme that Jeremy has just outlined. And for people who are anxious about building the hundreds of thousands, millions of more homes, I know that people worry about this. They think it's all going to happen near them on the greenbelt. You don't have to do it. You don't have to destroy beautiful parts of the countryside to build the homes we need. You can do it if you put in, as I said earlier on, fantastic public infrastructure, above all transport infrastructure. And you look at Crossrail 2, which the current Mayor of London has inexplicably abandoned. Brilliant plan. It would allow you to build 200,000 homes on brownfield sites in the Lower Lee Valley. You get good transport infrastructure done, and you liberate brownfield sites, help young people get on the housing market. That's what we should do.
Your policy chief, Liz Truss, thinks you do need to build on the Greenbelt. A whole load of different people think you need to build on the Greenbelt. Not building on the Greenbelt is purely a plan to appease Tory NIMBY members, surely.
Look, I used to be the senior planning authority in the greatest city on earth, and I didn't, which has a huge amount of Greenbelt in it, as you know. And time again, people would come before me and say, look, we've got to do this. This is just a bit of scrubby old Budlear-infested wasteland. We can build here. You won't feel a thing. And I would say no, because the green belt must be protected. And once you start eating away at it, you start to lose the rural feel of so many parts of the of the country, but you can build on brownfield sites. And look at what we did. We outbuilt Labour by miles. We built far more homes, both affordable homes and for market sale and for rent. And we did it by putting in sensible transport infrastructure of all kinds. That's what you need to do.
Mr. Hunt, the Greenbelt.
I agree with Boris that Greenbelt is one of the best things about this country. That if you look, actually, not just the Greenbelt, but access to green spaces. If you go over London in an aeroplane, you can see so many parks and open spaces compared to other cities. And actually, in most of our country, people have access to green spaces in a way that other countries can only dream of. And I think the great danger of losing that is that you lose it forever, because you can never go back once you build on these green spaces. But there is a trade-off. If you are going to protect those green spaces, you also then have to accept that in our cities and towns, we're going to need to make it easier for people to build up, not out. And actually, I think London is an example where you can do that if you have the right approach. You can have some skyscrapers, it doesn't have to be all skyscrapers, but you can do the planning in a sensible way that means that buildings look beautiful and attractive, but do end up going a little bit higher than might have happened in the past. And that is the trade-off that I think we have to make.
OK, one final quick point on this. Do you both recommit to the government's current target of building 300,000 net new homes a year, by the way, which this government has failed to meet in a single year? Boris Johnson.
Well, I mean, the biggest, I think, we had 68, we did 478,000 homes in this country. That's the record in my lifetime. We've got nowhere near it, as you know, Tom. I mean, maximum 200,000 a year. The run rate is far too low, but I'm not going to commit to a particular number now, except to say we've got to increase it. But we've got to build the right sort of homes in the right place. That's the most important thing. And I think what Jeremy had to say just now about density over transport hubs and that sort of thing is very, very sensible. That's what we should be doing.
Ms. Hunt, quickly, 300,000 target, will you stay with it?
Look, it's not an easy target, but I will stay with it because I think we need to send a signal to young people that we recognise that more houses need to be built, but we've got to do a lot of work to make sure we actually deliver it.
Thank you very much. You'll be sorry to hear that is the end of our audience questions. Time is running out fast, I'm afraid. Thank you to everyone who asked one. However, so many questions were submitted by our excellent readers and Talk Radio listeners that we have time, a few minutes anyway, for a round of short-fire questions asked by me. Gentlemen, the only rule on this one is a yes or no answer, please.
Yes or no?
Yes or no.
Can you...
Why don't we start with you, Mr. Johnson? Will you stick to Theresa May's target to cut climate change emissions to zero by 2050?
Yes.
That's quick. Thank you for sticking to yes or no. Mr. Hunt, is Jeremy Corbyn personally anti-Semitic?
Unfortunately, he may be.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
I think by condoning anti-Semitism the way he does, I'm afraid he's effectively culpable of that vice. Yes.
Mr. Johnson, will you continue to freeze fuel duty like the Conservative government and the coalition government before it did for the last 8 years?
I'm not making any more spending commitments tonight, but I'd love to.
That's a no.
It's not a no. It's yes or no. You've asked us to give a yes or no. Look, I'm not.
Which one is it then?
I'm not making any more blooming promises. You know.
Right.
Okay,
Mr. Hunt.
I agree with Boris.
I want to. I'd love to. And by the way, once we leave the EU, we'll be able to cut VAT.
Okay.
How about that? And excise.
Mr. Hunt, when was the last time you cried?
Ooh. Yes or
kind
no?
of yes or no.
Well, my daughter had a graduation ceremony this afternoon, but that actually wasn't the moment. The last time I cried was actually, this isn't yes, no, that's not a yes-no question.
Exactly.
How can you possibly, that's a trick question, refusing to answer.
You don't want to answer it.
I'm only answering yes-no questions.
You don't want to answer it.
There we are. Well, you said you were going to ask us yes-no questions, so refusal.
Mr. Johnson?
I think the last time I shed a tear was when I came out of I came out of Parliament to find that my bike had been nicked. I want you to know that this was very recently. And I had my bike for the whole of my mayoral career. It was a beautiful bike. It was given to me by Chris Boardman, the fantastic cyclist. It was a beautiful Boardman bike. It wasn't the most expensive Boardman bike, but it was a beautiful Boardman bike. And it was never nicked during all my time as mayor. I used to chain it up across the whole city, cycled everywhere, and barely had Sadiq Khan's reign begun.
Okay. Did you actually cry?
I think I became mildly lachrymose. I'll put it that way.
Right.
I did, yeah, because
no,
it was just
I definitely don't know what that means.
You just feel the sense of anybody who has something that they love stolen feels a sense of outrage and injustice.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons, by the way, we should have another 20,000 police on the street.
Okay,
Ms.
Johnson, here is a yes or no. Will you give England Cricket World Cup hero Ben Stokes a knighthood?
Dukedoms. We will go to the maximum of what the Garter King of Arms.
You're writing the next honours list. Is he going to get a knighthood?
Say again?
You'll write the next honours list. You're submitting to the Queen.
Write the next honours list.
Exactly.
May.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Does he deserve a knighthood?
Well, so yes, is the answer. Absolutely. Yes,
Mr. Hunt.
Of course.
Good. That was easy. Mr. Johnson, a question only for you now. Will you keep Mr. Hunt as Foreign Secretary?
I think that would come under the general category of an impertinent commentary on the future composition of a cabinet I was lucky enough to lead. But what I can tell you is I have the highest regard for Jeremy Hunt.
Mr. Hunt, would you give Boris Johnson his old job back as Foreign Secretary?
Look, Boris, you've got nothing to worry about. You will have a very, very senior role.
Well, you've given me Amber's job. You've given me Amber's job already. I mean,
yes, it might be that. Who knows?
Has Amber been on to the team at the back, by the way, to find out what's going on? Because I think there's the mutiny and dissension is going to be breaking out fairly soon.
Well, it is, but you won't give each other jobs. You'll both be in each other's cabinet, yes or no? Quickly.
Yes.
I think yes or no is the answer. Look, I think it's impertinent to.
You won't have Mr. Hunt in your cabinet.
I won't announce any. I really don't think it'd be right before the conclusion of this campaign to announce any jobs. The one way to survive these things is not to promise jobs to anybody.
Okay.
But you've heard what I said about my high esteem for Jeremy. You heard that, didn't you?
Final question: will you both go for a pint with each other once this is all over, Mr. Hunt?
Several, I think.
Not tonight, the leadership contest, Mr. Hunt.
For sure.
Mr. Johnson?
Absolutely, yes.
There was actually one more that I forgot. I'm so sorry. This really is the last yes or no. Actually, sorry, it's not even a yes or no. Who do you want to win Love Island?
I don't know. I don't watch it. I'm sorry.
Wait.
Mr. Johnson?
Oh, no, the thing is, I have been watching it very, very dimly over. It all seems to involve these people with very few clothes on in a. What's going?
You're not interested in that, are you, Boris?
I'm not interested in it. I can't remember. What's the right answer to this, Tom? Who?
I can't decide for you.
Amber. Amber's in Love Island.
Okay.
Let's both vote for Amber.
Okay. Amber Rudd to win Love Island. Thanks. That's a lovely way to end. Okay, thank you very much. That really is time up now. Very, very quickly, we're going to end the debate with a closing statement now from each of the two candidates. Mr. Hunt, your closing statement, please.
Well, we've had a good debate this evening, and I think there has been some excitement about the great potential of our amazing country. I think we can do better. I am someone who comes from a business background. I want to fire up our economy. I want to transform our education system. I want to tackle our housing problems. And I want us to walk tall in the world by investing in our armed forces. I'm someone who has the experience, the grasp of the difficult issues to actually deliver on these promises. But whatever happens, I pledge to unite our party and unite our country. Because after this leadership campaign, we need to come together, and I'll make sure that happens.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, your closing statement.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming on tonight. I think there's only one way to restore our national trust in politics, and that, as I say, is to get Brexit done by October the 31st. But that is only a prelude to getting on with all the fantastic things that we need to do. Better infrastructure, better education, fighting crime, and ending what I may call the defeatism that I'm afraid seems to have engulfed so many of us with a new can-do spirit of modern conservatism. And I think that I have the energy and the credentials to do the job. I think this is an absolutely incredible country, and we haven't believed in ourselves enough over the last few years. And I think we've had enough dither and delay. We need now to get on with it and to believe in Britain. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed for coming. We appreciate it. And thank you also to our audience here tonight, those watching on the sun.co.uk, those listening on Talk Radio, and everyone who was also watching our social channels and sent in questions and ideas. Stay tuned to Talk Radio now for instant analysis of tonight's debate with Ross Kempsell and a host of guests, and of course see all the reaction on the sun.co.uk and in our paper tomorrow morning. By next week, one of these two men standing here will be your next Prime Minister. I hope you now know a little bit more about them and what they will do with that immense power. From me, thank you very much and good night.